Welcome everybody to my first YouTube video. Today's topic, or better let's say project that I want to work on is evolving around the current drama in the world of chess, which has been picked up also by mainstream media, so I'm quite sure you have heard about it. If not, the current world champion Magnus Carlsen was hinting at cheating of the American Grandmaster Hans Niemann. In his recent Twitter post, he said that the recent progress of Hans Niemann has been quite unusual, and more important for us and also my motivation for this project, that he believes that cheating is an existential threat to the game, and later he says that we must do something about cheating. So what is meant when we talk about cheating here? Basically, modern engines or chess computers would beat human players 100% of the time. A player could just use a smartphone to enter the moves of his opponent and then get back the next suggested move and play that. And obviously that's a huge problem, especially in online chess play, because it's quite easy to cheat there. But even in over-the-board tournament, there's like a whole Wikipedia article on known cases. I will link it down in the description below. So I thought, okay, let's have a look at this problem from the perspective of a data scientist. Maybe it's possible that we come up with some sort of machine learning model that takes a chess position and sees or predicts how likely it is that a human would come up with a certain engine move. This way we could run this AI over the recent games played by Hans Niemann, but also by other grandmasters. And I think it can be quite interesting to see how likely we think it is that they had maybe some kind of support. By the way, I'm not a title player or a chess professional by any means. I have an okay rapid chess rating around 1900 on lead chess, but that's about it, so everything in this video should be taken with a grain of salt. Okay, as you can see, I have a new lighting setup. I think this looks a bit better. Let's have a look at what currently is already done for cheat detection. And I thought it was quite interesting because chess.com had a whole section in the report about Hans Niemann. Okay, so the first thing they're stating is that cheat detection is a difficult task, and they seem to use some kind of statistical method that gives a strong indication, but it depends on a lot of different factors like opponent strength. So if your opponent is much weaker, it's probably way easier to find the best move. Opening moves, so grandmasters have a huge book of theory and the opening memorized, so they will more likely play the perfect moves there. And endgame moves, what I think is that in endgames there is usually a lot of ways of winning it when you have an advantage, so the overlap with an engine might be lower, so that might be less of a statistical indicator. Going down here, they seem to be using both statistical and manual methods, and the first one and most obvious one probably is to just compare the moves being played to the recommended engine moves. So if you have a high overlap, then it's more likely that you use some kind of support. And as discussed, they seem to actually have removed moves from the opening and end game. They try to focus on the key or critical moves in the game. They do discuss this with a panel of trained analysts and strong players, so that's something we don't really have access to. Then they're also comparing a player's performance to their known strength or the strengths of comparable peers. They then look at the statistical significance of all of these results, and if, for example, this would be a 1 in a million chance of happening, then they would assume that that person was most likely cheating. They are also looking at behavioral factors. For example, if someone would switch the tabs a lot of times and then the performance would increase, it's quite likely that he would have an engine in the other tab, and that's actually something they observed with the Grandmaster Hans Niemann. And then they have an interesting statement here, because often there are situations where humans are required to understand how human or computer-like a certain move actually looks. On the next page, they explain how this actually works. So humans rely drastically on past experience, heuristics, guidelines, pattern recognition, and a very fallible ability to calculate moves in the future. And computers are not really constrained by that. They often come up with moves that even elite players reject immediately. Alright, before we continue designing our own method, I want to have a quick summary of how I think the chess.com method works. The first thing they do is calculating the overlap between human moves and engine moves. I assume they just use Stockfish, but we don't know that. Maybe there is some more engines running in the background. In the second step, we apply some filters. For example, we remove the opening and endgame moves, and we can apply some weights to give more attention to key moves or fast moves, anything that we think is more likely to be cheated moves. The third step is calculating the game accuracy score. This is basically the weighted average of the overlap with the engine moves. To calculate the cheat likelihood, we then use the player's elo, the elo difference to the opponent, and other features like the move timing, the browser behavior, etc. to see if we think this is more likely to have been a cheated move or not. I know this might have sounded a bit dry, but it was really an important baseline for everything that is about to come. Okay, so during my research, I came across a very interesting interview that I want to show a little part of it. It's with Livy Rossman, an international master and also a YouTuber known as Gotham Chess. Let's have a look.
What makes a chess move, quote unquote, human?
The difference between human move and engine and like what an engine move is I think two things. Number one, if you gave 100 grandmasters a position and they would come up with a sample size of 2 or 3 moves. And in comes the computer with a fucking haymaker, and suddenly everybody goes, oh, everything we know about chess has gone out the window. But the second thing about computer moves is they look counterintuitive.
So yeah, there are certain moves and certain positions that just don't make sense if a human comes up with them. Maybe it's possible for an AI to learn this kind of intuitive understanding of the game and identify non-human looking moves. In other words, we would try to combine the first 2 steps of the cheat detection method from chess.com. Okay, so in the last days I've been doing a lot of research, trying to understand how the AI world of chess works, and it's way harder than I thought it would be. This starts with the combinatorial explosion of the game and the diversity of different positions that could be reached, to finding the right network architecture and model input format. I think I reached the valley of disillusion in this project. You know, I really want to record my process, maybe inspire some people, maybe teach 1 or 2 things, but it's so much work, you know, it's so much overhead. How do people do that? You know, I just want to code.